Hey everyone, this is D Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And today, I'm coming to you all with something a little bit different. I have a collaboration for you guys today. And before I get into the nature of what that collaboration will be and what we'll be discussing, let me go ahead and introduce my guest slash collaborator. This is somebody whose channel I've been following for a little while now. I've really been enjoying their commentary, what they've had to say. Some of the reviews can definitely be brutal. They definitely go there. But I definitely appreciate everything he has to say. And so, I mean, it was a no-brainer to have him on and do this collaboration. So without further ado, my guest slash collaborator, Elliot, aka I.M.O Reviews. How you doing, man? What's going on?
Hi, it's good to see you. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Thank you for having me onto your channel, by the way.
Oh, no problem at all. Thank you for being willing to collaborate. I know this YouTube journey is interesting, and I think the most fun part is always finding new people and not just collaborating, but just, the commenting and just getting to know new people and hearing their perspectives. So I've been enjoying what you've been putting out, especially that Texas Chainsaw Massacre review.
Thank you. I say the same to you. I'm a big fan of your channel. I've been watching for a good few months now, and I've been a big fan of what you're doing. So keep up the great work.
All right, well, thank you. I definitely appreciate that, and the support really means a lot. So before we get into our subject today, can you let the people know what you're all about? Like, what can they find on your channel? Like, what is I.M.O Reviews all about?
I.M.O Reviews actually started out of absolutely nowhere. It was in the pandemic. I was learning to make films, and this became basically the replacement for that while everything else was closed down. And I just sort of fell in love with it. I have sort of done it on a whim. There aren't really that many ground rules about what I do. I like to take suggestions from people if they have a good idea, or even if it's an awful idea. Sometimes I'm willing to take that dive sometimes. So I review any range of movies. I try to do the most recent reviews, what's coming out into cinema, maybe on Netflix, Amazon Prime, these sort of things. I'm certainly trying to do more TV shows this year. That's something I didn't do a lot of last year, and I'm really trying to tackle that a lot deeper this time. So yeah, it's a little bit of everything. Video games, books, movies, TV shows, we talk about it. And I'm certainly looking to do even further material like what we're doing today.
Definitely, definitely. I am looking forward to all of that. That sounds awesome. And so, our subject for our collaboration today is centered around our top 10 WTF movies of all time. Now, Elliot, if I may ask, how would you define a WTF movie? Like, what is the criteria for you?
A big one for me that I thought about in making this list, which was a lot of fun to make, by the way. There were so many where I was like, oh, I completely forgot about this one. Where does this go into the list? But the big one for me was sort of like mental scarring. That seemed to be a big one for me. Those scenes where you kind of wish you could scrub it out of your mind, but you just can't. It's too deeply impacting. It's too strange to digest. That was a big one that kept coming up on my list. How about you?
I definitely agree with the scarring part. Those things you just can't quite get out of your mind, even though you really want to. I also think sometimes they can be films that just have really bizarre premises, and it's just like, wait, what? What is the story here, and what are we doing with this, and why? So I would say definitely what you said, and a little bit of just bizarre, just kind of odd stories and concepts. Yeah.
That was the other one for me as well, actually. There's a few on here where I found myself watching it and walking out thinking, I don't get this. I don't know what I just watched. But maybe later down the line, after a bit of thought, or even sometimes cheating and watching a YouTube explained video, I slowly piece it together and go, maybe I need to rewatch this. Now I know what the whole thing's about. Maybe I'll get it. And sometimes I do, but I do feel like I'm cheating a little bit. I'm not the genius who goes in first time and goes, oh, totally got that. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I'm the same way. And I do agree with that piece about like going in, and once you have someone else's kind of interpretation of it, then it's like, oh, okay, well, I didn't see that before. And then sometimes you go back in and you're able to appreciate it in a different way. And I will say that is the case for a couple of films on my list. But for some of the others, it was just like, yeah, no, this is it. I'm done. Thank you so much, but it's time to move on. So, with all that being said, can we start off with your first honorable mention? We're going to go from honorable mentions all the way up to number one. So, if you can start with your first honorable mention.
My first one is Enemy by Denis Villeneuve, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. This is one of those that I went in completely blind. I didn't really know anything about this at all, but it was the fact that it's Denis Villeneuve and Jake Gyllenhaal that I thought, I'll give that a try. Let's see how that turns out. And I liked it. There's brilliant performances. It's made wonderfully, but I did not understand it at all. I was like, what is going on here? The ending is so abrupt. It just finishes and it doesn't really invite the audience in to know what's happening. This is, again, as I said earlier, I actually remember having the epiphany for this one. This stayed in my head. It was like a riddle. I remember doing the washing up and I literally had the oh moment. It dawned on me what the film had done, and I just rushed back to watch it again. And I was still a little confused, but I got it a lot better on that second viewing.
All right. I actually haven't seen that, but Denis Villeneuve is obviously a very unique director. Of course, everyone is familiar with Dune that just came out this past year and is getting a lot of love and attention. I really enjoyed Arrival. That was a very unique film of his that I really, really enjoyed. I didn't even know what I was going to get out of that one, but I really enjoyed that. But yeah, Enemy, just going off of what you said, I'm going to have to definitely check that one out. So for my first honorable mention, I am going to go with Sausage Party, released in 2016. Directed by Conrad Vernon and Greg Tiernan, and starring Michael Cera, James Franco, and a whole lot of other actors. The first thing I can say about this film is that it still boggles my mind that we actually had parents who took their children to see this film with no research, no verification, not even when we got to the theater, like, hey, what is this actually rated? No, hey, this looks like a kid's film. I'm going to go take my children and go see this. So I wish I could be a fly on the wall to see what their reaction was. So when it comes to Sausage Party, the reason why it falls into the WTF category is not necessarily because of the concept, because that's been done before. We've seen adult animation, not necessarily CGI animation, but there are some scenes in this film that really caught me off guard. There's a scene where a douche bottle decides to basically suck someone to death. And it was very disturbing, and it completely caught me off guard. And I was not expecting to see this weird, creepy, dark. It was just a very disturbing moment that I did not see coming at all. And then naturally at the end, we have a complete orgy between all of the food items in the film. And that is something I don't think I have ever seen before, nor will I ever see again.
That's a great shout. Sausage Party really does deserve to be on this list. I remember seeing it with my friends, and it was a packed screening, and we were expecting it to be dark and, go into those grimier corners of comedy and things like that. But we didn't expect it to go that far. We didn't expect to be watching a full-blown food orgy. And it goes on for some time as well. It isn't just like a little 30-second gag. I feel like it takes up a good 5 minutes of the end there where it just doesn't stop. It's a pretty relentless orgy. I remember walking out and we were just in silence because we didn't really know what we'd seen. It was just like you do that awkward nod with each other, like, you're right, yep, good. It definitely deserves to be on the list. My final honorable mention, it's funnily enough another Jake Gyllenhaal film. It's Donnie Darko.
Oh,
it was a few years ago when I first watched this. I was maybe a bit too young, and I liked it, but I liked it for all the wrong reasons. I liked it because it was edgy, and you've got this creepy rabbit who turns up at night and speaks in riddles. I kind of missed the point of the movie, and so the second time I watched it, it was like, oh, this isn't how I remember this. I didn't think it went down this way. But even to this day, I don't fully understand it. A lot of the time travel stuff is lost on me, but I still enjoy the movie. But every time I think about going to revisit it, I do have that hesitational thought of like, are you sure? Do you know what I mean? I have that little, do you really want to get into this? So yes, Donnie Darko is my final honorable mention.
Those are great honorable mentions. When it comes to Donnie Darko, I will be honest, because I want to say that came out when I was pretty young, and the demonic rabbit really, really put me off from watching it. It was just hard to like embrace take the leap to watch the rest of it because I just kept seeing that rabbit, and I was just like, ugh. So now that I have a greater appreciation for like the macabre and things that are a bit edgy and darker, I probably will appreciate it more now. So I will definitely also check that one out. My last honorable mention goes to Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, released in 2007, directed by Tim Burton, and starring Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter. Sweeney Todd was new for me. I am a musical fan. I appreciate musicals, but a lot of my musical experience was with like Chicago, Moulin Rouge, and Hairspray and Dreamgirls, like things that are a bit more straightforward. I was not used to watching a film like this, and I still remember the trailer and hearing him sing, and I'm like, this is a musical, and I didn't know any of the backstory. And ultimately, I love Sweeney Todd. I think it's a great musical. The story is really interesting. Like it takes some really like shocking twists and turns, but ultimately, a big bulk of the story is about murdering customers and taking their bodies and chopping them up and putting them into pies for people to eat. You know, it is hard sometimes to think that I love this movie so much, even though that is like a big crux of the story. So I absolutely had to include that one.
There is one scene in Sweeney Todd that is a little bit mentally scarring. I believe, I can't remember who it is, but I believe they pull someone's big toe out of the pie. And oh my God, that scene just turns my stomach. It's definitely a messed up movie.
Now we are getting into our central list. So what is your number 10 WTF film?
My number 10 is a little bit of a cop-out, but as a fan of Star Wars, it made sense to include this one, and that is The Rise of Skywalker. In hindsight, I could really put the whole trilogy in here, but this one, I don't know, at the point of this one coming out, there was some hope still that maybe this will land the plane and it all makes sense, but it just didn't. They just totally nosedived and crashed the plane, and it was a disaster, basically. And because I'm a fan of Star Wars, I was a bit of an apologist for this when it came out. I have to admit, I was like, yeah, but they did this, and what about that? I was just trying to cover my eyes over the absolute monstrosity that this had become, basically. But as I've rewatched it, as I've watched others talk about it and acknowledge the flaws, this film is horrible. I don't know what Disney were doing. When I come to rewatching Star Wars now, I sometimes actually just stop. When it gets to that point of watching this new trilogy, I'm just like, no, we're good now. We finished it.
And it's one of those things, and I don't know if this is true for you, but like when it comes to a franchise that you enjoy, X-Men is another example. Even when the films aren't great, you still want to love it and you still appreciate it because it's set within this universe that you really enjoy, but you can't help but acknowledge like, okay, this is just not, this did not give what it needed to. This was not anything close to what it could have been. And I think the waste of potential is probably the worst part.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is. It became very lazy and it very quickly became about fixing the mistakes of the previous movies. And that's all this sort of exists for.
As far as my number 10, and I made the mistake of bringing somebody with me who, I don't know, they didn't have anything else to do. So they're like, okay, I'll just come watch this movie with you. And I was kind of like, I don't know. But I was like, well, maybe it won't be that bad.
I think that says everything.
Yeah. My number 10 is Midsummer. It was released in 2019, directed by Ari Aster and starring Florence Pugh. And the way everything plays out is just like my poor eyes, like the things that we are subjected to in that film.
I'd love to see what your friend's reaction to it was.
I think they were in shock. Because I think they just stopped talking after a while and they were just like, okay. I almost think they were just like, you know what? I asked for it. I came. I didn't verify. I didn't do anything else. So here we are. The standout scene. And there's a lot. There is a sexual ritual that happens in this film. And, we've seen all kinds of, intimate scenes or sex scenes in film. I don't think I've ever seen something quite like this, especially when you have someone who was literally helping the process and people who are standing around. whew, like I think I kind of lost consciousness for a minute, and I was just like, this is not really happening on screen. Like this is something like I'm like this is a I don't know, hallucination or something else. I'm projecting it.
It's a very bizarre movie. I haven't actually rewatched it. I have only seen it the once. I should probably revisit it. You're shaking your head. Maybe not. But maybe just to see if I've changed my mind on it. But I have to admit that it did leave me a bit cold. My number 9 is quite an unknown movie, at least in the UK. It's Predestination with Ethan Hawke. In the UK, I try to talk to people about this movie, but they just shrug and say, I've never heard of it. I did happen to watch this randomly on just a random night. It was just on I don't even know what channel it was. It was by chance, but I fell in love with it. It's a very obscure movie because it isn't what it's dressed up to be. It's on the surface level, it's Ethan Hawke as a bartender speaking to this woman who's drinking and she's had a horrible day and she's just sort of having a bit of a de-stress. She's getting it off her shoulders in a conversation with Ethan Hawke, and he sort of tells some stories back and sort of relates with them. And you're sort of, as it goes on, you sort of sit there and go, this is all well and good, but what's the point of it? I don't really know where we're going with all these stories and flashbacks. But then they hit you with a massive plot twist at the end. And I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it because it blew my mind when I saw it. They really pull the rug out from underneath you, and everything you've seen before suddenly has an entirely new meaning to it. And I had to just take a minute to process it all. After watching it, my brain went into overdrive, trying to put the pieces together. And I immediately watched it again, like not immediately after, but like the next night. I put it on again with a whole new spectacle to it, understanding to it, and loved it even more, if anything. So yeah, my number 9 is Predestination.
All right, so my number 9 film, it's difficult because this is a film I appreciate and there's a lot that I've learned from it, and it kind of goes beyond the film, but it's a whole lot to sit through, and I can't imagine really subjecting anybody else to this film. My number 9 is the film Beloved. It was released in 1998. It was directed by Jonathan Demme, and it stars Oprah Winfrey, Danny Glover, and Kimberly Elise. This film is based on a novel by Toni Morrison. She is a prolific author, a legend, won the Nobel Peace Prize. And her writing is beautiful, it's eloquent, but it's not mainstream and it's not really accessible. There's just a lot of allegory, a lot of like heavy symbolism and all of that. And the actual message of Beloved is something that is very impactful, and what it's really saying about history and slavery, post-slavery, like a lot of those things, that's fine. But as far as the film itself, is just that you see things that, once again, are honestly nonsensical. There is a scene at the end of the film, we are basically exorcising what looks to be a pregnant demon or spirit in the front porch of a house with all of these church ladies, like, wailing and crying and praying to get this thing out of here. It's a lot that doesn't make sense. And I think it's just a film that can't really work because the story borrows so heavily from things that can't work in the literal sense. So, yeah.
I've not seen it, but I have heard about it, and I have heard a few people say it's quite controversial, but I've never actually known why until now. So hearing that was quite eyebrow raising, like, really? Wow, that's in the movie? They do that?
There is something of value to the film, but the problem is it requires you to kind of read the book and watch the movie and read the book and watch the movie and read the book and watch the movie. And so, and I say that because it's kind of been this process over time. I saw this when I was younger and I was just like, whoa, I was so lost. And then over time, it was like, oh, I understand what this is saying. Like, I understand the subtext and the deeper meanings, but those meanings, it's difficult to translate that on film with a lot of different stories, especially this one.
So my number 8, this might be an unpopular opinion here. My number 8 is Tenet by Christopher Nolan. I was very excited to see Tenet, but I walked out so disappointed. To this day, I still don't really understand what's happening, what the point of the movie is, or what's really going on in the film. You kind of feel like you need to have a qualification in time and physics and time travel and space to understand the basic plot of this movie. That is probably my biggest complaint of Christopher Nolan. I think sometimes he forgets about the audience and he gets a bit wrapped up in patting himself on the back for being the smartest person in the room. Yeah, Tenet was just very uninviting for me. I don't feel like rewatching it. It probably would be good to rewatch it because there is some good parts to the movie. There's lots of great explosions, and I don't remember there being a lot of CGI. A lot of the action seemed to be really done by physical people going through glass and having fistfights in hallways. And then even more impressively, they reversed the footage to make it quite memorable and imprinting, and wow, that looks cool. It's just a shame I don't understand why it's doing that. So my number 8 is Tenet.
As far as my number 8, it is Under the Skin, released in 2013, directed by Jonathan Glazer and starring Scarlett Johansson. The closest thing that I can compare this to is the film Species. You will see some very interesting parallels between the two films, and it is just very unsettling. It is very creepy. It is very disturbing. There are two scenes in particular. There are a few disturbing scenes actually, but two scenes in particular. One is a scene where a character is being attacked by another character, and they just look like a regular person. They're being attacked, and they're kind of like grabbing them really hard and kind of hitting and scratching. And at some point, they make contact with their skin, and the skin starts to come off, and something really horrifying is underneath. And as the person has that realization, it kind of goes from there. And then there's another scene where this man is following this woman. Like, she's standing in front of him, but she's moving backwards. And so she's kind of like enticing him. And because he is so almost hypnotized by her, he doesn't realize that there's something happening to the ground he's walking on. And so by the time he feels like he's right in front of her, he is beneath her because the floor has swallowed him up.
It's sort of on my watch list because I'm actually a big fan of Jonathan Glazer. I don't know if you've ever seen Sexy Beast, but that's a really popular British movie that I personally think is great and doesn't get enough love. So my number 7 is an A24 movie, The Lighthouse. I actually really like this movie, but did I understand it at the time of watching it? No, not at all. I don't really fully understand it now. I've watched it a few more times and things are a little bit clearer to me, and especially when you do a Google search as to what does this mean, it helps explain the film a bit better to you and let you connect with it a bit better. But I wasn't expecting so much of a sexual nature to the film, that's for sure. And I still can't quite wrap my head around that part of the film. At times, I feel like this film is trying to do a little bit too much. It doesn't really focus in on any one thing. It's open-ended as well. You could possibly have a different interpretation of the film to me. I kind of like that, but it doesn't stop the film from being absolutely insane and quite uninviting to its audience. But at the same time, I still really enjoy it. I really like the way the film's made. It's black and white editing. I think the locations are top drawer. That I'd almost like to go to where it was filmed. It's very creepy and quite a haunting nature to it. I think the black and white filter helps add to that, because I imagine as soon as you see the luscious blue sky, it's not quite so creepy anymore. But I think it's got such a rich tone to it that I can just immerse myself in. I love the old language and dialogue, but it's absolutely insane. I have to just admit, it's really weird and insane, and it's not going to work for a lot of people. So my number 7 is The Lighthouse.
I don't know why, but it seems like such a straightforward film on the outside looking in, but I keep hearing like, no, it's not at all. So yeah. My number 7 is a film that I've grown to appreciate a lot, but once again, it asks a lot of the person watching it. That film is Mulholland Drive, that was released in 2001 and starring Naomi Watts, Laura Herring, and Justin Theroux, and directed by David Lynch. And it basically tells the story of this woman who ends up in a car wreck on Mulholland Drive. And she then develops amnesia. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know what's going on. And she runs into this aspiring actress who just, is there to live her dream and all these things. But then as they come together, they realize that, the city of lights and city of dreams, like there is a dark side, obviously. Once again, I was young when I remember seeing this, not like super young, but younger probably than I needed to be. It just like it was so surreal and so dreamlike in places and so jarring. And so I would say over time I've learned to appreciate it, but it just once again it requires a lot and it's very dreamlike, it's very confusing. Things seem to be happening that have happened before. You seem to be seeing the same people here that you just saw before, but different things are happening. And I would say probably the most confusing, which is kind of like the big climax of the film, there is a character or two characters that discover this box and this blue key, and they basically go and open the box. And it's like the box swallows, seemingly, them whole, and then drops to the floor. And after that happens, we enter a totally different film. And I'm just going to leave it there. Now that I understand it, I appreciate it for many reasons. I love how creepy and unsettling it is. I love what it's saying, but it's a lot. It really is.
I have to admit, I haven't seen it, but you've really sold it to me there. I'm quite intrigued. Everything you're saying is like, oh, this sounds quite good, actually. I might have to put this on the watch list. It's sort of come up in conversation before Mulholland Drive. People upon watching it have a lot to say about it. So I imagine that there's a lot going on in the movie. But I personally quite like that psychological horror stuff where you're not quite sure where you're standing. So that sounds right up my street. I have to admit, I might add that to the watch list. My number 6 is Only God Forgives. This is a beautiful but strange movie. What I like about this movie is the way it's made. I think the scenery, the lighting, I think all of that is top drawing. I think Nicholas Winding Refn, I think that's one of his best qualities as a director. I think his lesser quality is he doesn't really leave much of an impact with his stories, or if he makes an impact, he certainly doesn't really make it that inviting to his audiences. This film is very strange. There are mutilations. There are I don't really know if there is incest or if there's just a suggestion of incest in this movie. There's karaoke scenes that just sort of happen out of nowhere. There's a guy wandering around with a samurai sword, just because. Nothing seems to connect to anything at all. It's just weird events happening after weird events. You do need to apply some thought to the film. As soon as you crack the nut of this film, everything makes sense to you suddenly. You totally get what's going on. It's still hard to watch and still hard to digest, but suddenly, like I say, once you remove that really hard layer of what the hell is going on here, you're totally into it and totally get what's going on. I'm very mixed bag on this movie. I like it, but I also dislike it. So my number 6 is Only God Forgives.
Yeah, that sounds very unique.
Mutilations, hints of incest, and karaoke.
plenty of karaoke in the movie. Yeah.
All right. Well, my number 6 is a film I watched with a couple of friends, which definitely enhanced the experience a lot. My number 6 is Fantastic Planet, aka La Planète Sauvage, released in 1973 and directed by René Laloux.
And it basically takes place on this faraway planet. We have these blue, red-eyed creatures called the Trog, and they are oppressing these miniature humanoid people. And it deals with their growing rebellion against these giant creatures, basically. My friend was suggested this by someone. And what's funny is actually The Cell with Jennifer Lopez, that's a film I enjoy a lot. I've seen The Cell plenty of times, but there's a scene from this film, like Jennifer Lopez's character is watching Fantastic Planet on the TV. And because the film itself is so bizarre, it didn't occur to me that it was a real film. It was just like, oh, she's watching something weird. The world she's in is weird, and like everything is weird. So that's fine. But then I think when I went to Barnes and Noble and they had the Criterion Collection, I saw it and I was like, is that film? And it was that film. And it just so happened that my friend was recommended that, and she was like, oh, we should watch it. And I had my reservations, but she was confident. She was like, but he said we should check it out. So I was like, okay. We watched it. And I can definitely say, like, animation-wise, it's very unique and it's very, like, in-depth. Like, as far as, like, what they depict animation-wise and all that, it's very beautiful and it's very mesmerizing. But I don't know what is going on. Like, I don't know anything about this planet. And maybe I'm not supposed to know. But it's like this planet is here. These giant blue creatures with the red eyes are here. Like, One of the opening scenes, these Trog children basically kind of teasing and causing the death of this young mother. I forgot to say that the miniature humans are called Oms. So they caused the death of a mother Om, and then they decide, oh, hey, we left this baby behind. Let's just take it with us. And it's such a creepy, disturbing way to open the film. I mean, that's kind of the reality of the dynamics. You understand that, but it's just like, and then half the time you're just watching these very disturbing looking creatures, not them, but the species and the animals within this world doing very like creepy things and looking bizarre, and it was just such a, I don't know. It left me with an unsettled feeling afterwards.
It sounds pretty crazy. I have not seen it, but a murder and a kidnap in the first 5 minutes is pretty heavy-handed, to say the least.
Yes.